everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's installment of our Emmy Contender Chats. My name's Yvonne Villarreal, and I cover TV here at the Los Angeles Times. And joining me today is Yara Shahidi. Thanks so much. You guys know her from her role as Zoey Johnson on ABC's Blackish. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So on Blackish, it sort of explores, we follow advertising exec Andre Johnson and his pediatrician wife, Rainbow, the best name ever, and their 4 children. Yes. And like the Cosbys before them, they're Black, they're prosperous, and they're well educated. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about when you first got the script. Was that a breath of fresh air from the types of roles you were seeing and being considered for?
Most definitely. I mean, when I read the pilot script, it was still called the Untitled Anthony Anderson Kenya Barris Project.
Yeah.
And just reading through the script, you could tell that they really wanted to talk about something pertinent. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, even in the episodes that may seem like we're just goofing around, it really is addressing the Black experience, but from so many different angles that I really appreciated it, because the writers do such a beautiful job of tackling one subject from a different point of view for each character. And that was obvious from the very pilot script. And I think what's interesting is I'm so opposite from my character, Zoey, that it was fun to be the sassy girl on set and to really, I was given a place to then play and grow with her. So, I mean, she wasn't, when we started shooting, she wasn't fully developed.
Right.
And it was really throughout the course of season 1 and season 2 and talking to the writers and the writers figuring out who Yara was, in which we figured out who Zoey was. And it's been this amazing little journey.
Yeah, because the development happens slowly because it is a comedy. It can't be like overnight. Talk a little bit about how we have seen her grow through into the second season.
It was a slow journey because it's hard to write for teenagers, because if you're looking even at your own teenagers, you really don't see much of them. They're at school or they're at home doing homework on their phone with friends. So oftentimes adults write from what they see of their own teenagers. Yeah. So I think it was enjoyable to, as a teenager, say, hey, I want Zoey to be smart, whether she doesn't have to be book smart and she doesn't have to be like a genius, but what you see is her street smarts and how her common sense and her business savvy side really takes over. And that's obvious in even last night's episode. Was it last night? Last week's episode.
Like, girl, Sunday.
No, but in last week's episode, just she is the one that takes care of the family. And even if she is the sassy teen that rolls her eyes at times, she's nonetheless there for her family when they need her.
And she goes to the library when she says she's going to the library.
I know, which I love, because, I mean, it was even down to things where just in table reads when we're getting scripts, figuring out, like, hey, I don't think Zoey would say that. And I don't know what Zoey will say at this point, but I'd rather make her this multifaceted teenager. And the writers did such a beautiful job of just listening to what I had to say and then putting their own input into it. So we've gotten this really cool, complex character.
And your character is slightly based on a real person, right?
Yes.
And talk a little bit about that, because that must be a little intimidating.
And the best part is, I've known the person since 7th grade.
Let's explain.
Yes. Now, I'm not going to out her because I don't know if she wants to be outed.
Yeah.
But Kenya's daughter, the creator of the show, his daughter is who Zoey is based off of. And what was so funny was getting a script and I'm like, did she do this in real life?
Right.
So I text her like, really? Did this happen? And recently we were all in DC together, and it was me, the person my character's based off of, Marcus, who plays Junior, the person his character's based off of. And it was funny just trading notes on how we're similar to them and how we're so different at the same time.
Interesting.
But I feel like what was so enjoyable was that knowing who it was based off of, knowing her, and then at the same time figuring out, like, there were no constraints. There were no constraints of I had to be her, because it isn't a biopic, which I think being on a comedy, what was so nice is like, okay, I know this is where my base is. This is my origin story, but I was able to grow in so many different ways.
Did you ask her, though, like, give me some stories that I can use as blackmail in case I don't like where something's going?
I think,
Did she share any embarrassing stories about her dad, who's your boss?
Thing is, Kenya Barris is so open that you kind of know everything anyway. And you really can't blackmail him.
Right, that's probably true.
Yeah.
Well, this show gets a lot of praise for the way it sort of handles topics that, and stays true to the show in doing so. And this season in particular, we saw you guys handle some very heavy topics, including the who can and who can't say the N-word, and also police brutality. Talk a little bit about, like, did Kenya have conversations with you guys, the kids, about what you guys would be exploring, or how did he sort of approach it with you guys?
Well, I think when it came to the N-word episode, it was one that they had wanted to write for a really long time. So we were very aware of it. And what's interesting is Zoey's perspective is true to his daughter's perspective. So that was actually based off of something that happened.
Okay.
But what's interesting was when we got the script, we trust Kenya, and we trust all of the writers, because at that point it was the beginning of season 2 and they know us so well, and they also have an open door policy. So there are times in scripts in which it's like, I don't feel comfortable with this, or it's like, oh, I'd like to explore this more thoroughly, and they're so open to it. And I mean, they're already brilliant humans that we had that sense of trust, so we knew it was coming. And when we shot the episode, we were very aware of, I guess, the impact it would make. And what I really appreciated is that even though it was the second episode that we shot, it was the first one that they aired. And I liked the fact that we made a statement. And it wasn't to just draw everybody in and then changed it for the rest of season 2, but it kind of prepared them for what was to come. And then, as we saw, then there was the police brutality episode, Hope, which came out beginning of this year. And what was so lovely about that one was just after seeing Zoey grow, this is like the epitome of her growth, where you see that she cares, and she is the voice for Generation Z, in that she may not be the person that is super vocal or at the protest, but she is connected through social media, or she is connected to the people that are getting hurt. And what I really loved is that she had an opinion, and because it's so easy to say that she was off in the corner the entire time, not really caring.
Exactly.
But just opening the script and seeing that she had such a visceral reaction was, it was fun to play, because it was a more serious side that you haven't seen from Zoey. She has been sentimental at times, but to see her passionate about something, I think it really was a new facet to her that we really explored.
Well, and it was like we saw some maturity. Like, it wasn't all about what the adults were saying. It was like seeing it through the perspective of the kids.
Yeah,
which was
she
really
had a mature and different opinion, which it wasn't like she was echoing what her father said or what Pop said or even what Rainbow and Junior said. But it was this idea of, okay, I may not be the most vocal person, or you may not think that I care, but I do. And it's this idea that in this day and age in which we're overwhelmed by status updates of, I mean, even just unrelated, and then it will be related in a second, but even being at the White House, and we were there during the Capitol building active shooting. And it was almost overwhelming to see it on Instagram all of a sudden, and no one else told us. So we're at the White House and we're like, wait, so a block away there's an active shooter. And just seeing that, even though we may not have, like, it felt like it was this weird sense of, I feel so detached from it even though it's happening so close to me. And just having Zoey express that feeling of, we're so detached from it, but at the same time it's overwhelming to see constantly this bad thing happen, that bad thing happen. You see it all over Twitter, you see it all over Instagram. You can wake up in the morning thinking it's going to be a great day, and it's like, whoa, 65 people in Pakistan were just killed. And just having that opinion was so important, because I could relate to it, and so many of my peers could relate to that.
Well, we got a question on Twitter from Jasmine, who on that topic, saying Zoey's growth was prominent in the Ferguson episode. What has it been like portraying that?
It was, I mean, it was fun, first of all, just from an acting point of view, just being able to be more emotional. I mean, she is the sarcastic older sister, so that was fun just developmentally, but I think on set, it was a more somber moment. That entire week was really, from the moment we read the script the week before, it was this kind of somber moment, because we knew how important it was to do it right. And we knew how important it was to really put all of our energy into it. And I mean, unlike most episodes in which we have 10 changes, we're in 12 different settings, this took place in one room. We were in the same outfit all week. And what was so interesting about that episode was like figuring out how would Zoey feel and separate it from Yara. I mean, I considered what I felt, but even figuring out like how would Zoey feel during this moment in which the entire episode she's just been watching her parents try and struggle with this idea of, do we wait for justice to be served, or is this just going to be another dream deferred? And also the perspective of, I do have the younger brothers who you kind of have to tell, well, this just happened.
Yeah, exactly.
I have the 8-year-old brother. While we were watching the episode, he was like, well, who's Trayvon Martin? And it was that weird moment in which I could relate to Bo, I could relate to Junior because I am the analytical kid who likes to read James Baldwin, and I could relate to Zoey because it was this very real moment of, I have no clue what to do right now.
What's that like to sort of be part of a show that maybe, because growing up, like, what did you have to sort of look to for guidance, and what's it like to sort of be that for like a young person like yourself seeing it on TV?
Well, I have to say, when I'm only 16.
I know.
But growing up,
yes.
Growing up, my parents did such a lovely job of not, I guess, shielding me from things, but making sure that I was mature enough to truly handle what the world had to offer. So even just from a young age, when it came to viewing people, I'm a chocolate connoisseur, and I thought everybody was a beautiful shade of chocolate. So that person was white chocolate, that person was butterscotch, that person was caramel, that person was dark chocolate, and all chocolate is yummy. So it came from this place as this innocent 4-year-old of like, how could you hate anybody?
Right.
Because no chocolate is bad. How could you hate them based on their appearance? All chocolate tastes good, which means all people are good, so to speak. And I think growing up, I was really introduced to these concepts of discrimination or racism in very controlled settings, whereas first introduced to me through James Baldwin and through Sandra Cisneros and through Zora Neale Hurston and reading their works. And I feel like getting a grasp of it from a more objective point of view helped me when it became real.
Right.
And because, I mean, in high school, it was the first time where, I mean, I've the great fortune of never having crazy experiences with racism, but it was simple things like, oh, well, you're basically white, or oh, you're so whitewashed that da-da-da-da-da-da. And people didn't understand that, how that simple phrase could really affect somebody, especially being multicultural and saying that I'm neither of my cultures, I'm neither Iranian or black. It was this idea of how can your stereotypes about one ethnicity strip me of my identity, where it's like, how come how I talk means that I am less black or less Iranian? How does that work? And it was also this idea of like, well, then what do you think of black people? And it was that weird realization that even that the racism that I saw within my own generation really stemmed from ignorance and just a lack of knowledge, where it wasn't that their intention was to be racist or mean, or that they did not like black people or thought they talked one way. It was that just in media and in what they see, that was the most obvious thing that they saw.
Exactly.
And I feel like that's what was so important about being a part of a show like Blackish, in which it continues to inform people in such a great way, where it's not, we're not throwing anything at you like you have to believe this or else, but they really delve into the multifaceted sides of each topic, and each character represents a different point of view. And so there are some times in which I may relate to Junior more than I relate to Zoey even, or there are days in which I relate to the twins or Bo or Dre. And what's so nice about Blackish is that I don't have to in any way differentiate myself from the show, but it's a beautiful place to grow up and to be surrounded by people who are so thoughtful and really care about us staying children but also making an impact.
Right. Because what has been the reaction that you get from people your age or even older or younger? What are they telling you about what this show has done?
What's so lovely is that they all love it because there's something relatable in it for everybody. Just because all of the characters are so different and because we try and tackle it in such a real way, they may relate to, some people relate to, oh my gosh, I loved what Zoey had on.
Yeah.
Other people relate to, oh, I loved the content. I love what Zoey had to say. Other people may relate to, I am the older sister who has little siblings, and I get what that's like to try and try and work with them and how difficult that can be. And sometimes they relate to the idea of, I'm growing up in this crazy new world of social media in which I always know what's happening all of the time. And it's this idea of, I'm trying to gain my independence, yet the world is scary and I need my family. And so there's so many ways you can relate to Zoey alone and the show at large. People really love it, no matter whether you're Black, white, Puerto Rican, and it's fantastic to see.
And it's funny.
Yes, it's funny.
Another question from Twitter is, what has been the most difficult yet rewarding episode to shoot? And maybe we've already talked about it, or maybe we haven't.
I think there are two, for totally different reasons. I think Hope, of course, just for the reasons that we talked about before, because it was so different than anything we had done. And it really showed a different side of each character. So I think it took a lot more prep work of saying, we've never seen Zoey like this. So how do I want her to react, and how do I want this to stay true to who she is and true to Generation Z? And so I think that was a difficult and fun challenge. And then there was the episode in which I get a car. It's called the Twin Dependence episode. And
the library.
Yes, and it was so much fun and challenging because I had to learn, Mandarin?
Yes, I was going to say
German. And I got to speak some Farsi, which was great. And I learned how to change a tire, which was amazing. I couldn't quite get the juggling down.
Do you still remember how to change the tire? Or are you just going to call AAA like I do?
Don't tell my parents I know, but I do.
Okay. It seems impossible to me.
I know, but they got it. Like Transpo on set, all the guys that work with the vans and all that, they sat me down. We had the Buick in front of me.
What did Anthony say?
He was impressed. He was impressed. And I was impressed. I didn't know I could do it.
That's hilarious. What's it like working with them?
Oh, it is so much fun. It is honestly the best set where...
Do they try to out-funny each other?
I think they've given up because it's not possible.
Right.
You can't out-funny Tracy and Anthony. It's just not going to happen.
That's probably true.
Yeah, but I think what's so nice is that we're in such an environment in which there's no such thing as a wrong answer or a wrong ad-lib. It may not fit for the scene and you may not say it again.
Right.
But to be in an environment in which the adult actors really, I guess, prompt you or encourage you to take it, do more than what's just on the page.
Right.
And I think just by watching them, we've grown in so many ways because I figured out, like, oh, this is how Zoey would react, where it's down to simple things where if Bo starts talking for more than, I guess, 5 seconds, I pick something up from the table and start playing with it. And it was something that developed over time where I didn't even realize I was doing it, but it just came natural. So there are times in which I'm, like, spinning broccoli on my finger. There's one episode in which I'm just, like, throwing things at Marcus because Bo is talking, and just figuring out what those relationships are like and how the dynamic can change in an episode and how to allow the dynamic to grow and evolve and not stay static while still remaining true to your character has been such a fun adventure.
And what's it like on set? I mean, you were just talking about AP Calculus.
Yes.
How's it like fitting in the studies? And then let's talk about your work with STEM and getting some, bringing some attention to that, particularly in the show too.
Yeah. Well, I am currently taking 3 AP classes, 2 honors classes, AP Calculus, AP Literature and Composition, and AP World History.
Kids, this is your mentor right here, okay?
It is, I'm not going to lie, it's quite a juggling. It's quite a balancing act. I think what's lovely is that Kenya and Groff and everybody in the writer's room, everybody on set really encourages us to, and gives us the proper support to
do it.
To do it, yeah. So
are Anthony and Tracy trying to help you with your homework?
I think what they help me with is finding my notes on set. I'm always leaving notebooks on set. My mother can attest to this. There was an AP Euro notebook that I left on set for about a week.
Oh my God.
And I had everybody on set looking for it.
Oh my God.
And I think, who was it? One of the PAs, Flip, I remember this. He gave it to me, and he was a savior at that moment,
my God, I
because
can
it
imagine.
had all of my notes in it.
That's crucial.
So I think, yes, so they always help in that manner. And then also, I mean, I enjoy school. So it was one of those things where I wasn't willing to really sacrifice anything. I was like, I didn't want to take easier classes because I like the challenge.
Right.
And so what's nice is truly enjoying my classes, and we've really made it so that I can take the classes that I want. Yes, there are requirements that need to be fulfilled to graduate, and yes, there are things that have to be done to get into
Right.
college, but it's really been self-guided from like, you know, I love history, so I'm going to take the advanced history classes, and even though you may take AP World senior year or even sophomore year, I want to take it this year because it lines up with this class, or I want to take AP US history next year so it lines up with government. And what's so interesting is how even what I'm learning in history plays such a pivotal role in modern day, where I think what I like to say when I'm explaining things to my brothers, I locked them in a room once to teach them a history lesson. I have to admit,
Mom, is this true?
I had gotten a new laser pointer and I had a map of the world, so it just kind of had to happen.
You're like,
yes.
yeah.
But I forget what I was teaching them about, but I remember the one thing I said was like, history is like a play with 5 characters that just keep changing outfits.
Oh, interesting.
Because I feel
Look
like
at
so
you.
many times what's so fascinating, just I've always loved history and I want to study sociology in college, but this idea that we progress in so many ways technologically and just making the world a smaller place through social media and through, I mean, we have so much technology now in which I can talk to somebody that's 1,000 miles away in a matter of seconds, and just understanding that even though so many things have changed and so many of our circumstances have changed, we keep making the same mistakes.
Yeah.
And it's funny to watch, and I think my favorite example is how Napoleon and Maximilian and Robespierre get the French people into trouble, yet when Napoleon III and Maximilian decide to run, completely different people, by the way, they're like, yes, come run. Like, you didn't see that coming?
Yes.
But I think it's just a funny example of we grow in so many beautiful ways and we see that growth and we're more connected than ever, but at the same time, we're dealing with a different version of the exact same thing. I think racism has become more insidious in some ways and very obvious in other ways, in which now, because we have social media, we know when some unarmed child was shot, and we know it immediately.
Right. Well, talk about the work with STEM and
Yes.
bringing awareness and.
Well, I am a STEM advocate. I'm actually going to go to the last White House Science Fair under the Obama administration.
That's amazing.
Tomorrow?
Yes. That's why we moved the chat. Yes.
I'm going
And that's
tomorrow
science,
morning.
technology, engineering, and math.
mathematics.
Yes.
And I think what's so important about it is that it really, more than just taking a class to get great credits, it really helps you with problem solving, and it helps you be a more analytical thinker. And I feel like oftentimes STEM programs are underdeveloped just because it takes a lot of funds to do the proper experiments or have the proper, I guess, supplies. And so what's been so lovely is I partnered with DoSomething.org, and there was a PSA, and we raised over $100,000, and that money went to specific STEM projects in classrooms in Minneapolis, my hometown,
Nice.
and St. Louis. But what's so amazing is seeing young girls empowered in STEM fields, because there is an overwhelming lack of a female presence. Because oftentimes there is this assumption that it's dominated by males, and
that it's a male trait.
it is not a cool thing. And I feel like it's so important that somebody's love or interest in STEM isn't, I guess, squashed by this idea that, well, I'm not a man, this is not appropriate for a woman, what's something more appropriate?
And you've tried to maybe make some of that in your character, right? Incorporate some of that?
Definitely.
Talk a little bit about that.
I mean, what's interesting is even though we may not have had a direct STEM storyline yet so far in the show, there are things such as the mention of the fact that Zoey is a straight A student and she is a chem whiz. And even though Zoey wasn't even in the scene in which they said it, just dropping those seeds of Zoey's this cool, fashionable girl. She's cooler than Yara is. And
not possible. Yara's pretty damn cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And she's this fashionable girl who is in the in crowd, yet you see her
She can be popular and
school.
smart.
Yeah, and it's not
it's not
one or the
other.
And I think it's so nice to have that balance, and even if she's not talking about math in every single scene, it's still the presence and still saying that it's always mentioned in an episode one way or another, saying like, look at this young girl, and it's possible. It's possible to have it all. It may be hard. It is a balance, but it's possible, and you shouldn't have to squash one side of you for another side to thrive.
Right. Let's take another question from social media. There's a lot to choose from. Let me see. From Carletta on Facebook, what issues or topics are you hoping the show will explore as you head into season 3?
We've been thinking about this, and I mean, there's so much that we've already covered, and the writers do such a brilliant job of making sure it's the appropriate time to cover it as well, so making sure our characters are in the right spots. But I think one thing that might be nice is because we're such a matriarchy on the show, in which we have such powerful female characters, from Bo to my glam mother, Ruby, to Diane and Zoey. I think what would be nice is just discussing the re-emerging social media feminist movement through like the He for She movement. The UN is doing so much, but just because we have so many female characters, I think it would be nice to directly address it in some way, just because it's so prevalent in our lives. I'm not saying that the feminist movement was gone for a period of time, but it has really become it's been in the spotlight because of the new capabilities through social media to get more people involved.
You should pitch that. Have you pitched it?
I think I will. I was thinking about it.
Are you watching?
I was thinking about it.
This is the next season.
Blackish, I dream about Blackish now. I get off of work, I go to sleep, and then I dream about episodes, and that's how life works.
I'd rather dream about Blackish than AP Calculus. But
although AP Calculus has become personified in some of my dreams.
Really?
Now, in which it's funny because I say it as a joke in real life, where AP Calculus is my boyfriend and we're breaking up May 19th at 12 p.m. as soon as the exam is over. But I think in one dream recently, I was like, who is that tall man? Wait, that's AP Calculus. I met AP Calculus.
We should have had like a therapy session and just started with that. I wonder what that means.
What do my dreams mean?
That's scary. I don't want to dream about work personified. How about with Jasmine on Facebook? Going forward, do you think you will continue to pick socially aware roles? I would hope yes.
Most definitely. And I mean, there is the one side of, as an actress, I always like to be challenged, and I mean, it's really, every story deserves to be told, and I feel like really for me, it's, the bigger picture is portraying an accurate and real character, so even if it is not as socially relevant as the Hope episode per se, just feeling as though I am a true reflection of somebody, because as a person of color, both Iranian and Black, there's a lack of role models for people of color, and I think when you are part of mainstream culture, you do see the balance of, okay, that person's a druggie, but most people are lawyers on TV shows, versus, okay, you may have one or two successful Black businessmen, or you may have a few Black doctors, and Courtney Vance is a gift to the world in Law & Order SVU, but so many times you can count on, oh, well, there's the Black guy in jail, there's the Black drug dealer, and to be able to be a part of balancing the scale is a nice thing, and it's not something I take lightly. And so I hope that they are as socially aware and that I get opportunities like Kenya has given to us in Blackish. But yeah, it's really about, I mean, there's so many projects that have even come in which it's like, I don't feel comfortable doing this because it's not how I want to feel portrayed. Even though I know the character is not me, I want to look back and even have a positive role model for teenagers.
You don't want to add to the negative.
I mean, so many times, even taking away race, gender, sexuality, just being a teenager, oftentimes on TV what you see is, okay, that person's smoking, drinking, partying. And that is the reality for some teenagers, for a lot of teenagers. But at the same time, there's almost this stigma of, wait, you don't go to parties?
Right.
I had a friend ask me, an acquaintance, ask me, wait, so what do you mean you don't drink?
Yeah.
And not to dog on them, it's just one of those things where it's like, that's not who I am, but sometimes there's a social stigma of, I don't go to parties, does that make me not cool? Does that take away my cool factor that I rather not be inebriated?
We are the same person, just letting you know. I've got some years on you, but we're the same person.
Nice to meet you.
I want to talk about another role that was quite a feat I can imagine. You played a young Olivia Pope on Scandal.
I did.
Talk about what that was like, and did she bestow any advice for you?
No.
Carrie, not Olivia, but did she?
It was so much fun. Well, I can tell you, starting with the audition process, it was honestly, I think the audition was like reading a book, and there was a small scene. So I took the book I was reading currently, which was the biography of Abraham Lincoln.
Wow, okay. I read that too.
So I was basically in the room being Yara, and apparently they just liked Yara, so that was great. And so we rebranded it under Young Olivia, and I think on set I got to work with the amazing Joe Merton and Candy Alexander.
My God, he's unreal.
Both of them are such incredible
Never interviewed
humans.
her, but yeah.
And being her flashback, it unfortunately means that we can't be in a scene together unless Shondaland likes the idea of some time travel stuff, which I'm not opposed to.
I don't think she'll be opposed to it in the future, but at that point, I'm sure it wasn't something.
Yeah, there was a lot going on in the show already.
Yeah.
But what was so nice was that even though she wasn't working that day and she was on a different set, Carrie came to set just to say hello to me and introduce herself, and she was like, I loved your audition tape, and I watched it, and I knew you were it. And what was so nice was, I mean, it's been said to me multiple times, but it was cool to reaffirm this idea that she said where it's like, we loved you, so please be you.
That's
because
nice.
it's something so beautiful about being authentically yourself in a world in which you are paid to be somebody else.
Well, I think that's how we should end it. For those watching, be you. Be yourself.
Camera 5, right?
Camera 5.
Yes.
Yeah.
Be you.
Well, Yara, thanks so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure
for
talking
having
to
me.
you.
This was fun.
It was fun. I hope I don't cut into too much of your studying.
No, I have it planned already.
I'd say text me if you have questions, but I know nothing about calculus. I'm sorry. I was bad at math. But to all you watching, thanks so much for tuning in to our Emmy Contender Chats. We'll be doing more, so tune in. Thanks so much.